When I said the protest, it's because LGBTI individuals are going through big struggles throughout the year. And there is this one of the days when you go out and when you put both of your emotions, it's one of them, it's you walk proudly due to who you are and due to who your friends are. And the second one is you know that you are walking because something is missing in you practicing your own human rights.
Hello and welcome to The Human Rights Defender, a podcast series in which we'll explore the work and lives of brave individuals standing up for our human rights. My name's Philip Merrill. I'm Communications Officer at Civil Rights Defenders, an international human rights organisation. And in this opening season, we'll be taking a closer look at the Western Balkans and Turkey, regions in which democracy and the rule of law have come under growing strain in recent years. Our guest in episode 6 is Rajmonda Sylbije, a seasoned LGBTI activist in Kosovo. She's been a very powerful voice at Pride events across Europe, tirelessly advocating for greater awareness and solidarity for the community in the Western Balkans. Rajmonda, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Could you begin by giving us a picture of the general situation for LGBTI persons in Kosovo and some of the key issues that you focus on at SAL?
Yeah, so good morning, Philip, and thank you for having me and having the opportunity to be part of your new lines of the podcast released. So, generally the situation of the LGBTI persons for the moment are slightly different due to the pandemic and due to the COVID effects in generally human rights globally as well. But overall, it has been for years since Kosovo provides kind of good legal protection on LGBTI issues in Kosovo. When I say it offers kind of a good one, I mean that there are still gaps and there are still many things that need to be changed, and that's what two organizations, CSGD and SAL, are strongly committed to do and to work and to change. So as regarding to the previous situation, because I always do a comparison, as I've been active in the LGBTI scene since 2006, so I've kind of witnessed different stages of the movement itself. Comparing to the previous years, now it's kind of the scene, I would say it's largely and more significantly visible within the society itself. And now we have much more individuals who are vocal and outspoken and present in the media or participate in different cultural events, which are not as before, for example, organized underground, but are maybe organized in the public events. And I see the participation of the younger generation is much higher, and they feel much more comfortable, firstly, for who they are, and secondly, are more empowered and vocal within the society itself. So this has been one of the things which I have witnessed as an LGBTI activist through my work. But of course, there are still same problematic issues which are followed for years, and we hope that this will one day end as a struggle, not only in Kosovo but globally. So domestic violence is still highly present when LGBTI members are outed or decide to come out in their family members. It's worth to be noted that in the Balkans generally, but specifically also in Kosovo, due to the economical situation, not many members live alone and are not employed. So this directly affects your living standards, meaning living with the family members, and so the violence, psychological or physical, mainly starts there. So from then other problems raise when it comes to the bullying in the schools, when it comes to non-acceptance in the society, and when it comes to high level of homophobia and transphobia in Kosovo. So then you face basically everyday discrimination in your everyday life.
So as I understand, you're saying that the legislation is pretty much there. Not exactly, we're still working on a few issues, but the legislation is pretty much there. What's not happening is that this implementation or that it's not actually trickling down to society. Are you seeing, when you talk about social acceptance, do you think this has been improving as well over the years? Have you seen any positive steps in that sense?
Yeah, correctly. So the issue with the legislation is that it's still a big gap between the existing legislation and the current implementation of the laws. It's important to be noted that the many laws which are in place are still not largely even understood by the institutions itself. So it had to be a large work in increasing the capacities of the institutional servants so that they are aware of what does it mean being even protected by the anti-discrimination law. So we speak about the institution which have voted for and put in place certain legal mechanisms, but in the other hand, not really sometimes being neglected, or sometimes not even being aware itself of what does it mean. So this, of course, affects, if you don't have an implementation in place, the problem kind of remains the same. And when you ask me about the society in large, I think that the previous actually 6 years have been significant in terms of increasing the awareness about the LGBTI issues within the general society itself. Because since 2014, the LGBTI organizations have been organizing for 3 years in a row marches for International Day Against Homophobia on 17th of May. And then it was followed with organization of the Pride, 2017, 2018, and 2019 for 3 years in a row. So that, of course, these public events have played a significant role in raising the awareness among the general population. And I think that the increased representation of LGBTI movement in public media has also played its role in lightly making the society at least be more knowledgeable about what LGBTI, first of all, means as a term, and second, understanding the struggles and the difficulties. But this is in a light scale, which I believe in a soon future we will need to conduct a new survey, which will show us what do we think the situation is currently in the field.
You mentioned you've successfully held Pride for 3 consecutive years. 2020, this year, of course, heavily hampered by COVID. We've seen Prides across the region having to go online and have various digital programs. What have been your key priorities looking forward to Pride this year, not only in terms of program, but also in terms of what are the key issues that you're looking to highlight?
First of all, we had to, as everyone, I think, in the world, we had to adapt to the pandemic situation, and we had to postpone the planned period of June, when the Pride Month actually is. Actually, our focus has been very much oriented towards the difficulties that LGBTI individuals were struggling due to the pandemic. Because when Kosovo went locked down, of course, the economical situation has also been, and it still is, worsened. Many LGBTI individuals had to go back home, those who were living alone. So, it's important to understand that many of the LGBTI members who live in different cities, they come to the capital. So it kind of gives them a certain freedom of being who they are, because they are not that close to their family members, and they kind of feel more free. So it made many individuals go back to their homes, and we have seen an increased number of people requesting or requiring the psychological sessions, which have been provided during all the period online. And there we could see that the situation when it comes to the domestic violence have been worsened, and the general psychological stage, due to being isolated and not being able to maybe communicate live with other LGBTI individuals, their friends, their partners, and so on. And we had to be very careful, because it was a kind of tricky timing for violations to go under carpet. This was kind of our focus since the pandemic kind of showed up in Kosovo, which happened in a more larger scale since March. And so on. What happened in the meanwhile was that the draft civil code was presented in media by the Minister of Justice. So I believe that it was a very bad timing used when human rights organizations are active, but didn't have many means of additionally advocating. So it was a large discussion for many years of inclusion of the same-sex marriage in the civil code, Kosovo civil code, because Kosovo didn't have a civil code so far. Same-sex marriage is forbidden by the family law, which strictly and precisely says that the marriage can be done only between a man and a woman. And it has been a long years of advocating and sending clear recommendations why we believe that the same-sex marriage or partnership should be involved, and it clearly violates the human rights of LGBTI individuals if it doesn't get included. So it took us a surprise within the pandemic situation that the Minister of Justice goes on TV and in few minutes explains that the draft civil code is kind of set up and is not going to include the same-sex partnership nor marriage within the civil code itself, but they propose it will be regulated by a specific law, which for us is highly not satisfactory, because from the previous practices, whichever laws regarding LGBTI issues were proposed to be done separately and not included in the proper large-scale laws never actually happened. So our focus was for the several last months was quite focused there in terms of advocating, and because it has to go through the voting, it has to pass through the government, then it has to pass through the parliamentary groups, and then it has to be voted by the parliament. So now the situation is that it's currently within the parliamentary groups. So we are trying to strongly advocate there and hope that the civil code as such, it not only violates the rights of LGBTI individuals, it also violates lots of segments when it comes to gender and women rights. So we are now lobbying and advocating and doing our best so that it doesn't pass as such. Or at least if we have a clear, final plan, when is the specific law going to be adopted? So we don't want to leave gaps, because with leaving gaps, it can take years and years, and it would never be adopted by the Kosovo government.
Would you be planning some sort of manifestation to mark Pride? Do you expect?
Yeah, this is what I was trying to connect. So we had several meetings last 3 weeks, because the situation in Kosovo regarding the cases of COVID-19 new positive daily cases have for the moment decreased. And we have requested the Kosovo police the permission to hold a pride which will be organized with cars. So there will be approximately 30 cars who will be rowing and riding through the city. And we are planning to use, of course, rainbow flags and to make all the cars like a little beautiful packages. And it also symbolizes in Kosovo, and in some parts of the Balkans, it's still present. It's a very traditional way of when you do a wedding, and when you take a bride from her home to the place where she is married to. It's a tradition that there are cars with music, with a flag. So it's kind of giving our statement regarding the exclusion of the same-sex partnership and marriage from the draft civil code in Kosovo.
Actually, just in preparation for this, I came across a video. I believe you were speaking at Oslo Pride, and I remember you mentioned that in Kosovo, in this region, Pride is a protest, not a celebration, as it is in much of Western Europe. Can you elaborate a bit on this, and essentially what needs to happen? Will we ever get there that Pride is a celebration enjoyed by wider society?
Yeah, because I remember at that time we were only organizing marches, we didn't still held a Pride when I made that statement. It was a very emotional event. I've been participating to several Prides in Europe, also including Stockholm Pride several times and Oslo Pride as well. At that time, it was very touching to participate in such big and large events where you could see thousands and thousands of people enjoying the Pride Week, enjoying the Pride Corner, and not only using the march itself, the Pride March, the Pride Walk, but also having so many beautiful celebrative events and cultural events and so on. And at that time, we were kind of testing the society with marches and not calling them yet prides, because we were looking and testing both how will the institutions react and how will the protection from the Kosovo police be, and how is the society reacting towards that. So when I said protest, it's because LGBTI individuals are going through big struggles throughout the year, and there is this one of the days when you go out. And when you put both of your emotions, it's one of them, it's you walk proudly due to who you are and due to who your friends are. And the second one is you know that you are walking because something is missing in you practicing your own human rights. Then the last 1 or 2 years, it took kind of a slightly celebrative spirit, but it's far different from the ones organized in Europe. So that's why I clearly stated. And it was a very emotional and non-preparatory speech which I made. And it really just came across my mind. And it was the first-hand thing, which I thought that's what I spoke. I felt like, wow, will we ever have this large number of people just coming by with kids, with the parents, with the grandparents, with syndicates being there together, and not even thinking about the diversity and about the differences, but just everyone being there and celebrating it as a beautiful day.
I guess one moment when we may get to see this, possibly, will be 2022. I'm sure you've heard Belgrade had applied and successfully won to host EuroPride in 2022, the biggest pan-European Pride event. I know you visited Belgrade Pride on occasions, and I was just wondering, do you feel the region is ready for this, something of this scale?
When it comes to being ready, I think of many terms. When it comes to being ready, it's organizative part, or is it socially accepted part? What I for sure know is that the region needs EuroPride. It will significantly and in a large scale give a very strong message. So I think that I was closely following the proposition for the EuroPride, and I was extremely happy that the Belgrade won in terms of being the host of 2022, because it will give several messages, and it is very important to the LGBTI individuals itself, because it will be a large-scale event. And as for the preparations, we in Balkans have been kind of used with taking many permissions. So we are used with thinking the worst-case scenarios. So everything else, what comes up, it's always more beautiful. So when it comes to organizative part, I think that the Belgrade has extensive experience in that. Even, I have been following and I've been very close to the LGBTI movement in Serbia. So they have been going through many struggles, many refusals, and finally with many successful organized prides. And I think that the winning, that it's totally satisfactory due to the all struggles and work being done. And I believe that it will have a positive impact, not only for Belgrade, but it will definitely have a positive impact in the general region itself.
One thing that was interested in, and I had followed the contest quite close as well, is that Belgrade was going up against Barcelona, I think Dublin, Lisbon as well, cities which, as we mentioned in the previous question, completely represent, let's say, the sort of celebration that you may see with a pride, not necessarily a protest. But the fact that Belgrade had won, and with such a resounding success as well, I think it was a vast majority of votes of EPOA members that voted for Belgrade. Does that to you signal that Europe and that pride organizations across Europe are now recognizing this need for solidarity and are essentially shifting the front lines in that struggle for equality to the Balkans?
I deeply would like to believe that it's happening so, because I know that it was a quite tough competition. As you mentioned, it was, comparing to the cities and countries which have very extensive experience in organizing large scale prides. I think that the solidarity within the LGBTI organizations in the Europe and Balkans, it has always been very cooperative. And I believe that it was kind of clear that the Balkans need to give more and more statements, and the LGBTI individuals need solidarity. And I strongly and deeply want to believe that that's why Belgrade was chosen to be one of the EuroPrides. Besides of really having very good organizative set skills for organizing such an event.
Moving on a bit, Kosovo has been in the global headlines over the past few weeks, primarily due to the bilateral talks that have been taking place in Washington. I was wondering, what is the sort of take across civil society? Do you feel that there's enthusiasm for the government to be resolving these large political issues now? And generally, what is your take on the situation?
Yeah, so the political situation has also been one of the key actors because I don't know how much are you aware. In June, imagine in the peak of the pandemic, we had the change of the government. So the opposition voted for the government to fall, and a new government was established. So it created a very uncomfortable feelings, I believe, and distrust and confusion within the society and within the general population itself, and also the civil society. We were surprised, and because many of the institutional changes also affect our direct work, because you start lobbying with one thing, one issue in advocacy, and then comes another person, another government, and it clashes it all from the beginning, from zero. So it goes all over and over due to not having a political sustainability in a country. When it comes to the last few weeks, it has been largely present in the media, but I think that it's just my personal impression. It's that the society is kind of tired of such things for the moment. There have been big topics discussed. There have been many tricks discussed that this is going to be planned. This is going to be between US or EU. It was a big discussion. Will EU take the lead or will the US take the lead? And it was a big discussion. How much is our government pro-American or non-American? It was a very big discussion about many things. And US taking the lead of inviting both leaders of the both countries in terms of moving forward with the agreement, it doesn't clearly give any significant change for the moment. So it's not like that things went wow, because there have been such dialogue discussions before in Brussels. And again, many things that have been discussed are quite technical. It's been seen with a skepticism, and let's see how it will follow up in practicing all the agreements that they made. What's important, it's one of the things that Kosovo is committed by the document. It states that it was very interesting for me to see that kind of a document, including homosexuality as well. It's one of the parts of the article of the agreement says that the Kosovo will work towards decriminalization of the homosexuality in 69 existing countries who currently criminalize that. So, this was something that has been discussed also in Berlin a few years ago, where one of the leaders of CSGD has participated. It was a private meeting between Mr. Grano and some other participants as well, and they have discussed about the possibility of joining efforts in decriminalization of homosexuality. But this happened 2 or 3 years ago. And now it was interesting to see that Kosovo government has put that very clearly on the paper. I'm just wondering, how is it going to be done? How is Kosovo government going to give efforts when it comes to that? So besides all the political changes, it was interesting to see one segment including decriminalization of homosexuality in 69 countries all around the world.
You mentioned you've been involved in activism for several years now. What were your personal inspirations to commit your cause and your life towards human rights and be a human rights defender?
Living in a quite patriarchal society, which accepts very difficultly the concept of being different, has been one of the biggest drives for me becoming an activist. And I think that sometimes you become an activist in a aware or non-aware stage. So I come from a mixed parents, and in Kosovo, having mixed parents such of an Albanian and a Serbian, and being a child of such a beautiful mixture to me, has not been for decades a very easy thing for people to accept. So it's kind of, I think that this stands in me since my childhood, knowing the feeling of being different. It's before the war, before 99, I would be the target because my father is Albanian, and after 99, I could be easily bullied because my mother is Serbian. So living in this kind of conditions, it made some people become stronger and become more vocal. So since childhood, I had to be adopted, and actually decided to be the one defending my own rights and not wanting to see any kind of discrimination or bullying happening around me, because violations here and discrimination happens to Roma people, to women, to anything that can just be different. And that led to my kind of, let's so say, that vivid activistic spirit be kind of lived when I moved to Pristina and when I luckily found out the existence of LGBTI organizations. So my deepest motivations was that someone needs to stand up, and we have been few who stood up, but these few could make much more fews in the future, and the society and the community needs to know that there is someone who is strongly committed to stand behind everything that's going on. It was not at all an easy journey. Comparing to now, there have been many threats, many physical attacks to LGBTI activists, not only LGBTI activists, but also to LGBTI individuals, who are not public and so on. So it's just, I refuse to see injustice.
You just said now the very few that decided to stand up. I think I also saw in an interview you gave, I think you mentioned where there was this initial sort of surge, I guess, post-independence and, of course, coming out of the sort of the post-conflict period, where there were people who were committed towards human rights and activism and so on. And that in many cases, in many ways, this circle is as broad as it can be from that initial surge. And now that we need to connect with the new generations and to sort of motivate them, inspire them about about human rights and to get involved in activism. Again, correct me if I've misquoted you here, but how do we broaden the circle? How do we touch upon new generations who maybe don't have that memory of the war and may have different priorities, essentially, may have more sort of economic issues which are burning them down rather than social justice and human rights and so on?
Yeah, I think that is actually correct. That I believe that each generation deals with different problems and different difficulties and different struggles. It's true, for example, that the even current stage of activists are living different problems than we were living, for example, in 2000. And I can speak from my time in 2006, for example, regarding also LGBTI situation, which I totally understand and it stands, but I believe that it should be always as a flow, that someone drives some others further. I think that someone drew me further, and we drew, when I say we, the people that were much more active during that time. It was difficult, for example, because we were functioning underground. So imagine empowering people by functioning underground. It has been very tough. But by time, there have been younger generations who were highly empowered, some of them by itself, some of them by the organizations, because organizations has put a lot of efforts in trainings, participating in different events in the region and in Europe. So a lot of focus has been given to the empowerment of the young activists, so that they see and they get empowered in order to implement some of that, or to just even give a spirit for them when they come back to try and to see what kind of changes they can do to the Kosovar society itself. I think that it should go as a flow, like someone made something where I was, and I and others made a certain situation where now the new generation is. And I strongly believe in it, that we are here to remind the situation how it was and how is and so on. And I believe that the young generations should be aware, because it's not something that happened 50 years ago. Yeah, I'm speaking about the situation which was just 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And if you compare the situation, it's highly different. I can see the changes. I can see the events, and I can see the enthusiasm and the spirit with for example, with drag shows, with young lesbians or bisexual women. Their enthusiasm and their sparkles in the eyes when you have these cultural public events. It brings me to tears, because silently we have all been working for this day to come. But in the other hand, they are not there to be dragged always to the past. I believe it is something that should be continued and continued.
Rajmonda, thank you. Thank you so much it was really, really insightful, and we definitely wish you all the best, firstly for Pride this year and generally in the struggle, that you're representing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I hope you will have good news, because the Pride will be held on 12th of October. So I will definitely provide you with links and things so you see how it all went. And thank you for having me and for giving the opportunity to speak about very important issues.